I went to a little potluck in Chiang Mai at this apartment block where everyone was staying. And there was a lot of us there. And HC was there as well. And we were talking a bit. She says, I had a problem with my MacBook. Have you got any tips? And I said, where's your computer? She goes, upstairs. She said, you can come up and have a look. So I said, okay. So we went up to her room, just me and her, no one else. She closed the door. We went in. She sat on her bed and she had her computer out.
There was a potluck in my apartment building that I was at with my friends. I was talking about the fact that I just about finished my ebook, and so I offered to show it to him, and I said that I'd just go up and grab my computer, and he said that he'd come up as well because he wanted to use my bathroom.
And I could tell there was a bit of attraction going on there. Mutual attraction, adult mutual attraction. And I found she was a nice girl, well, she was, and she obviously liked me.
I just felt sorry for him.
And so we talked a bit more. We had email conversation or Instagram conversation. I've got it all saved somewhere after, because I sort of had a hunch something might turn out. So we go back downstairs, we talk more, and then I think later on it was HC did really cool banners and graphics. She does really good stuff. She's got good talent there. And I said, how about you, if you want, design me a book cover for my Durianrider's Lean Body Bible, the cycling ebook, and do me a little channel banner. And if you do that, if you're happy with doing that, I'll give your ebook a shout out. And then so I said, well, maybe come over to my hotel and one night and we can sit down and work it out. She said, no worries.
So what actually happened was he asked me to meet him at Taipei Gate. And so I went to Taipei Gate in the early evening. And when he arrived, he just was like, let's go, and rode off. And I assumed we were going to go to one of the nearby vegan cafes, like I said, but he just rode off to what would turn out to be his hotel. I didn't actually know that we were going to go there, and I wouldn't have been okay with that had he told me. So I was like, okay, so she turns up one night to my hotel and she's dressed nicely, you know, attractively. I was like, okay, here we go. Had plenty of places in the place to work. She's like, where should we sit? And I said, sit anywhere. She goes, that looks all right. So she plonks her computer on the coffee table, a little small couch. I said, okay. So I sat next to her. This is a big hotel room. We had like chairs and tables and stuff like that. But HC chose to sit on the couch. So I sat next to her. So this is going to be good. And we talked for a bit. We did the work. Maybe we talked for an hour or 3 hours. It was pretty late at night, maybe past midnight. She turned up maybe 8 o'clock. So we're hanging out for a long time. And the vibes were good, the vibes were mutual. And I thought, well, I'm gonna see where I stand here. So I wrote on the app or something like that, I said, would you like to kiss me? And I showed her that. She started laughing and giggling. She's like, what do you mean? And we had a bit more of a chat. And she's like, oh, well, I don't know. And she didn't really want to do it, so I said, no worries. I was very uncomfortable.
And I didn't want her to feel creeped out. So I asked more questions. I said, what's wrong here? She says, you know, you've just broken up. And I said, look, I'm not looking for a girlfriend. I find you attractive. You obviously find me attractive. This is nothing serious. You know, it's just a Chiang Mai sort of thing. She's like, okay, but nothing happened. And she went home. And then we talked more. And then she said the next day, she sent me an email saying, do you want me to come over tonight and we can do some more work? And I said, okay, no pressure. So she came over again.
Yeah, so I did the ebook cover as soon as I had time at work. And yeah, and so I sent the email and like giving him the ebook cover, basically, like from my perspective, that was the end. Like I'd done what he'd asked me to do and that was it. But he turned up at Taste from Heaven where he knew I would be and kind of just invited himself to our table. I intended to go back from the dinner to my apartment. He said to me in front of Emmy and Tanner that I hadn't finished the ebook that I had promised to do for him, and I was like, well, I've emailed it to you. And he said that he had some amendments that he wanted to make to it, and it wasn't going to be very long, and it was just a couple of things. And I was quite hesitant.
And we got it on. She sat in the same little position on the sofa, and we're making out on the sofa, and then HC says, maybe we should go to the bed. And I said, only if you're comfortable with that. And we went to the bed and progressed. We had sex. And it was adult, consensual sex. She didn't say that in her video though.
So what actually happened is a really unpleasant, horrible story. I wasn't really paying attention to what he was doing. He was just somewhere in his room behind me. And when I finished putting the ebook cover together, I turned around to tell him that I'd finished it, and he had obviously been arousing himself behind me, because when I turned around, he stood right behind me, with an erection, and I just froze and turned around, and he walked around and sat beside me on the couch, and there was a cushion beside me, and he picked it up and put it over his crotch, and that's when he said, like, have you thought more about what we talked about last night? And I said yes, I had thought about it, and the answer was still no. And when he said that, that's when I noticed that his voice had changed. It was like a little boy, and I just remember thinking, like, how strange and scary that was, that he'd like become this different person. And so I said no, and he was trying to kiss me and like asking if he could kiss me, and then like leaning in, and I had to like lean out of the way, and I said no, and he would ask for more. He asked to have sex, and I said no, and he wasn't taking my answer. He wasn't like listening to what I was saying, basically, and he was just touching me and trying to kiss me and asking me for sex. And so I started saying all these excuses, like, you've just broken up with Freely, and I'm on my period, and yeah, and so he kissed me anyway and wasn't really listening and was touching me, and so I got up and said, like, I have to leave now, and
then he grabbed her and choked her and forced himself on her. And if he didn't, he can bring us to court.